Veterans, today we're going to be talking about the top 5 best connected claims to PTSD based upon the strength of the medical etiology that connects them, the likelihood of the VA to accept that medical etiology as a secondary claim, and the amount of backing documentation that you can use that we're going to show you in this video to leverage. Let's dig in. Veterans, I know 99.9% of you out there slept like last night. So what we're going to be talking about today is that OSA, otherwise known as obstructive sleep apnea, is #1 on our list beginning the countdown. You've seen comments, you've seen people talk about how they submitted sleep apnea secondary to PTSD and they got denied. Well, I'm here to tell you that no right? Because what a lot of people do is they will take that 526 form and they will write sleep apnea secondary to PTSD. And they'll be like, got him, got him. Use the Welvin thing. Got him, got him, got him. They're making some raiders scratch their head and be like, all right, cool. Because here's a news flash. Raiders themselves don't have medical backgrounds. If they don't have medical backgrounds, how are they supposed to understand this? Well, it's on you, the vet, to connect the dots. First thing we're going to cover is the medical etiology of how PTSD can cause or worsen obstructive sleep apnea, right? So chronic hyperarousal from PTSD increases sympathetic nervous system activity. This tightens the airway musculature and it destabilizes breathing during sleep. PTSD elevates cortisol and adrenaline levels. No right? Disrupting normal sleep cycles and increasing the likelihood of breathing interruptions, which can otherwise be called arousals. Recurrent nightmares and fragmented sleep degrade airway stability, making the upper airway more likely to collapse. PTSD medications such as SSRIs, SNRIs, atypical antipsychotics can often cause weight gain. No, and that weight gain is really the #1 way that sleep apnea starts to get after you. Trust me, I know. So next, PTSD-related insomnia leads to sleep deprivation. Right? So even if you don't have quote unquote normal obstructive sleep apnea, which is a specific mechanism different from insomnia, this can cause the worsening of airway stability, right? That's ultimately at the end of the day, one of the big causal factors in this. It's a contributing factor. Finally, chronic stress and hormonal changes increase inflammation. Now this is just a less medical way of saying your cortisol is through the fucking roof, but you need to understand it ties in. So let's dig into the next piece of this, right? The medical linkage. How can clinicians connect these two disabilities? Strong comorbidity rates really in the medical world mean that there's a strong relationship between these things happening together or in a causal fashion. Veterans with PTSD are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop OSA than the general population. Boom, data point. Data point, data point, data point. Causation pathways are well established. PTSD leads to hyperarousal, sleep fragmentation. Boom, you've got an airway collapse. Sleep apnea is an issue, right? Weight gain secondary to PTSD treatment. Dear God, you cannot, any form of PTSD or depression is going to cause weight gain. It's one of the most common things that comes from this, right? PTSD is one of the most documented predictors of sleep disordered breathing in VA and DOD, or now DOW, populations. CPAP adherence improves PTSD symptoms, which can demonstrate a reversible relationship between the two conditions. Using a CPAP machine can get rid of the sleep apnea. Yeah, it could hurt your rating, I guess, but the rating. Sleep apnea is a silent killer, right? You want to get rid of that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't file for the rating that you have and deserve, but it does mean that you can potentially get better. Clinical literature identifies PTSD as an independent risk factor for obstructive sleep apnea. Now, this is a groundbreaking one that's in more recent times, and they said now, hey, if a veteran has PTSD, that's now a biomarker to say, hey, we need to get them assessed for sleep apnea, something that had never happened before. The VA has recognized OSA secondary to PTSD in thousands of validated case decisions, and that's just through VetClaims.ai alone. It doesn't have to be severe. Don't be a superhero. Get yourself checked out, all right? #2, you degenerates, we're gonna be talking about hypertension. I say that with love, lots of love. Hypertension is the second best connected claim to PTSD. Let's dig into the why. PTSD keeps the body in a chronic fight or flight state. Makes sense. This causes persistent elevation of adrenaline and norepinephrine, which directly raises blood pressure. Makes sense. Hyperarousal from PTSD overstimulates the sympathetic nervous system, which tightens blood vessels and increases vascular resistance. Damn. Long-term cortisol elevation, which is cortisol is your stress hormone, right? It thickens the arterial walls, making them stiffer and more prone to hypertension. None of these are cheerful, I'm sorry. How clinicians connect PTSD to hypertension? Well, PTSD is recognized as an independent risk factor for hypertension. It says that even if you came into the doctor for something completely unrelated, and you say, I'm diagnosed with PTSD, still got some symptoms, blah, 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 that means that it instantly should throw a flag for you to be assessed for this other issue. And in this case, we're talking about hypertension. You're incredibly unlikely to have one without the other. So if number one, OSA applied to you, diamonds to dog, this one does too. And if you're not there yet, that's good, but you need to be paying attention to it. I myself suffer from high blood pressure, suffer from sleep apnea. These are things that you have to take serious. There's things that you have to get engaged in the fight on, right? I had a blood clot last year while I was building this company, working too long, working 18, 20-hour days, sitting still, and I had a blood clot. And what happens? And I'm telling you this because you need to be scared of it. I was a competitive power lifter. I was deadlifting 700 pounds. I was pretty healthy, but it didn't matter. I went to sitting still for too long and boom, a blood clot happens. And then what happens from there is I go to the VA doc and they're like, well, try not to die for 6 months because there's nothing we can really do besides hope that this doesn't break loose and go to your brain or your lungs, which is terrifying. Because if you have a stroke, it doesn't really matter how fast you call 911, right? Damage occurs almost instantly. And then furthermore, I was terrified because I didn't know if my left leg would ever go back to being able to walk normal. The answer is luckily, thank God it did. These are scary things that I should have taken more serious. Take care of these things, be vigilant. America needs you, America needs her veterans, and we need you here healthy, okay? Well, we already talked about how PTSD can kill you via a heart attack and your blood pressure, but what you didn't know is that PTSD could be the reason you have a problem swallowing. Leave it in, John. All right, we're going live. Number 3 on our list is going to be GERD, because GERD's the word, bird. All right, let's talk about the medical etiology that causes or connects GERD to PTSD and how it can cause or worsen GERD, right? So chronic stress from PTSD increases stomach acid production. I personally did not know that one. Overwhelming the esophageal sphincter, I said sphincter, and triggering reflux. Why are you laughing, bro? PTSD disrupts the autonomic nervous system, weakening the lower esophageal sphincter. How many times am I gonna get to say sphincter today? I love my job. Making it easier for acid to escape upward. Yeah, you know, a loose sphincter causes upward acid. Okay. Stress hormone. We're talking about stress hormones. Cortisol, adrenaline, slow digestion, delay gastric emptying, increasing pressure inside the stomach, which is a major cause of GERD. Sleep disturbances from PTSD lead to reflux episodes at night due to disrupted digestive timing and increased nocturnal acid production. That makes so much sense. Veterans with PTSD are 2 times more likely to develop GERD than the general population. That's pretty wild. The gut is heavily influenced by the brain. We're learning that more and more in the world, aren't we? 90% of serotonin produced in the digestive tract. That's insane. Like, I've never been someone who had an upset stomach. I've never been someone who had heartburn. I could eat anything, kind of a bulletproof gut. Nothing bothered me, right? And I found that, like, regardless of what I ate, I would wake up with horrendous heartburn, but it would almost always be associated with a night that I was having night terrors or very restless sleep. This is a gold mine that we are giving you here if you're trying to win the fight on GERD with the VA, because you're now having ways to describe your symptoms that align with peer-reviewed medical journals. You can Google exactly what I'm saying. You can find them and get the peer-reviewed link and put that in your statement in support of the claim. If you're working with VetClaims.ai, we're already incorporating this into your backing documents. That being said, IBS is the 4th best secondary claim to PTSD, and that's what we're gonna be talking about now. So, you know, if you got a leaky butthole or a leaky esophagus, stay tuned, we're going in. So, sympathetic nervous system overactivation slows or speeds intestinal contractions unpredictably. That's pretty wild, right? PTSD disrupts the balance of gut microbiota, I might be mispronouncing that, which plays a major role in digestion and inflammation. PTSD medications like SSRIs and SNRIs frequently cause GI side effects. Sleep disturbances from PTSD worsen digestive regulation, increasing IBS flare-ups. If you're noticing, all of the things that we've now gone through are contributory to this, right? And it just keeps going all the way into our last one. Next, let's talk about medical linkages, right? How clinicians can connect PTSD to IBS and how they commonly do so. PTSD is one of the strongest psychological predictors of functional GI disorders. That is insane. That's an insane statement. The VA can't deny that. The VA is not going to stand up and say, oh, we're smarter than the Harvard Medical Review. No, that's not what the VA is going to do. It's not what the rater's going to do. That right there, just like in all the other symptoms or all the other disabilities and secondaries we've gone over, that is a dot connector for you, right? Veterans with PTSD show significantly higher rates of IBS, boom, statistical backings. The gut-brain axis is medically recognized, making PTSD a valid physiological cause of IBS, boom, dot connected, peer-reviewed journal. Studies confirm that trauma exposure leads to chronic GI dysregulation, boom, dot connected, right? Medical journal. You got your statement of support of claim, you got your nexus letter. These are all coming together. I hope you guys are seeing the picture that I'm painting for you and why we're making this video. IBS is considered a functional disorder, meaning it's driven by dysregulation. Exactly what PTSD causes by definition. All right, veterans, we've made it to the end. Number 5, and I know you're all curious what it is. The 5th best secondary claim to PTSD is chronic pains. This, on top of everything else we've just given you, is how you tie it all together and ensure you're getting the rating you deserve. So let's talk about the general pain pathways, right? The medical etiology of how PTSD causes or worsens chronic pains. PTSD keeps the body in a constant stress response state, which tightens muscles and causes long-term tension that leads to chronic neck and back pain. So if you already have a neck and or a back issue, right, the chronic pain side of this can be exacerbated, and that should go in your statement in support of your claim and or the nexus letter, right? Chronic adrenaline and cortisol elevation, right? This sensitizes pain receptors, making normal sensations feel painful, right? This can make things that would maybe be a 5 for someone else feel like an 8 for you, right? The chronic adrenaline and cortisol elevation from sleep apnea, from PTSD, especially if you have both, there's a super strong link there, right? And that is where the medical etiology is going to pay dividends if you know how to reference it in your claim letter. Of course, if that sounds complicated, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but that is what we do here at VetClaims.ai. So having PTSD diagnosed alone is medical backing that your pain is more significant than that of the average humans. Pretty wild work. Sleep disruptions from PTSD reduce tissue recovery and increase inflammation, which worsens pain and conditions causing it. Boom. What I just gave you is a laundry list of bullet points and statements that you can make within your statement supporting your claim and or your nexus letter to make your claim bulletproof. Now remind you, everything that I read you in these lists is verbatim from a peer-reviewed medical journal. All you have to do is Google it to get the source, and that is something you can directly reference. I would recommend APA format if you're gonna put it in a statement supporting your claim. PTSD and chronic pain often co-activate each other, which means that treating one can treat the other. Similarly, when one gets aggravated, the other can get worse, right? Or the other one can activate as well. Lack of restorative sleep is known as a cause of pain escalation and is medically documented as so. Boom. Lack of restorative sleep is known as a cause of pain escalation. So if you've got OSA, you got PTSD, it just keeps getting stronger. There's a reason we layered this video the way we did. Everything we're doing is not telling you to claim this just to claim it. It's saying if this relates to you and if you have this, here are the bullet points, here's the ingredients, here's the things that we would include in the statement supporting the claim and the nexus letter to ensure that you're connecting the dots for the rater. Reminder, the VA owes you nothing. You owe the VA connecting the dots on your claim. Now let's talk about some interesting facts. Up to 80% of veterans with PTSD report chronic pain. 80%. Fibromyalgia is 2 to 3 times more common in individuals with PTSD, even without physical injury. That's insane. Migraines are diagnosed in veterans with PTSD at nearly double the normal rate. Finally, the VA regularly grants chronic pain disorders as secondary to PTSD, especially migraines, back pain, and fibromyalgia. I am not telling you to claim chronic pain disorder. It's a whole battle, it's a whole thing. Whether you deserve it or not, the VA is just gonna make it a fist fight and a half. But if you've got back pain, migraines, or fibromyalgia, then those are the chronic pains that we would be referring to with this section. And at the end of the day, if you want help doing so, go to VetClaims.ai. That's why we're here. We don't take your back pay, we don't take a multiple, we don't make up a random number at the end of the day. We have one flat, low fee. End. Never ask for more. If you're new here, my name is Lucas Simoner. I'm the CEO and founder of VetClaims.ai. I'm a Purple Heart recipient from the war in Afghanistan. I'm a former paratrooper from the 82nd Airborne Division. I've built a couple of big businesses. I now employ over 200 veterans, and I'm happy to say that I'm making this video to help you get the rating you deserve, and more importantly than that, get to a place of stability in life so that you can start to take bets on yourself.